Tonight on Cosmic Cantina, could the planet Mars be humanity's next exclusive travel destination? You only need a warm jacket and $1 billion. For the rest of us common folk, however, we have to go to whistleblowers channeling from odd interdimensional beings and blurry photographs from the 80s. We also interview researcher Billy Carson about some interesting new alien images from our celestial neighbor. So unless you're friends with Elon Musk, feel free to hang out with us at the Cosmic Cantina and listen to some wild Martian speculation. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golembeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. Welcome to Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and tonight I got kombucha and vodka.
Ooh, what a combo.
Very nice.
Healthy and not so healthy. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
50-50 bar.
Yeah. You got to look after your body. I
do.
I decided, instead of trying to force a beer down myself on these mornings, I'd work it into I work my casual drinking into my breakfast routine. So I got myself a little Irish coffee here. And man, I put a little stank in this one. So good luck to you both.
All right. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Well, Josh, what do you got?
Now. Tonight I'm celebrating national treasure George Clooney, the man, the myth, the living legend, by partaking in some Casamigos, which is my favorite tequila. I'm becoming a tequila man because it's gluten-free. I want to be a whiskey man, but I can't. So I'm going tequila. Casamigos.
So tonight we're going to Mars. And I have an amazing interview with Billy Carson with never-before-seen videos and images that he has supplied just for this podcast. What do you guys got?
Ooh, Mr. O'Connor.
I wanted to look at these two little fellas that are floating around Mars, the two moons of Mars that are kind of crazy, and a mission that went over. It was like a joint, mainly a Russian mission that went over to those little moons to check some stuff out, and weird shenanigans went down with possible UFOs.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
That sounds groovy. Nice. Well, tonight I'm going to do two things quick. I went deep on Mars, and I always like to go back to the law of one. So I asked Ra, I researched what Ra says about Mars. So look forward to that. And also I'm going to dive a little bit into those tubular structures that go around Mars that you can see clearly in photographs and what they could possibly mean. Could they be giant serpents shedding their skin? I don't know. That's one theory. It's probably not true, but it's possible. So we'll get into it.
All right.
Yes, they are.
I love it. I love Mars, the red planet. All right, so let me start off with some articles to set up the Billy Carson interview. So, as you may or may not have known, but it's pretty big news, we have successfully flown a helicopter over the surface of Mars. Lots of publications are talking about it, but I took a CNN article titled "NASA's Mars Helicopter Successfully Completed Its Historic First Flight." Quote, now 117 years after the Wright brothers succeeded in making the first flight on our planet, NASA's helicopter has succeeded in performing this amazing feat on another world.
Nice.
That was the associate administrator for NASA's science mission. He also added, while these two iconic moments in aviation history may be separated by time and 173 million miles of space, they now will forever be linked. The two, he talks about the bicycle makers of Dayton and the Wright brothers creating a flight on our planet. And then, of course, NASA's helicopter on the surface of Mars. And this is pretty amazing. But in my mind, just because we do all this research and on possibly secret space programs, that this might not be the first flight on the surface of Mars.
Okay.
Go on.
I mean, I'm just lightly speculating. That's all I'm saying.
It's a
lightly.
So we talked about this in a couple other podcasts, but there is a lot of stuff out there where organizations and countries are building hotels that are going to be on Mars, and they're building this whole space infrastructure, and then the military is like, we're going to have a base on the moon so we can get to Mars, as if we haven't heard this before, right?
Sure.
But now it's just happening overnight. So in 2019, SpaceX published a timeline for a Mars colony that Elon Musk wants to build. Now, of course, this isn't new. As you know, Werner von Braun, he was the first person to really sketch out how he was going to build the first colony on Mars in 1960.
Right.
But this is really amazing, these images that his team has put together. Elon Musk has a grand plan for getting humanity out of the confines of Earth, setting off to the moon, Mars, and even further reaches of the solar system. Musk has regularly estimated that humans could establish a city on Mars as early as 2050.
Oh, wow.
He has led the development of the Starship, the rocket designed to refuel and relaunch using liquid hydrogen and methane. And he hopes that this will encourage the first commercial flight and then, of course, build this colony on Mars in 2050. So it's just in the last year, we're just ramping up to like all of a sudden we're going to be on Mars as if it can happen now, but it couldn't happen then.
Wow.
In an astronomy site called Universe Today, Space and Astronomy, they have published lava tubes on the moon and Mars are really, really big enough to fit an entire planetary base.
Whoa.
We haven't heard this before, right? If you've been following the secret space program, you know that there's not only underground bases in underneath the Earth, but there's also underground bases in the moon and Mars. You know, so this isn't
Everything's
new,
hollow. There's bases everywhere. It's awesome.
there's bases everywhere. But now they're publishing these articles and saying, "Hey, they're so big down there, we could build a base."
Wow. Yeah. Sure.
And so literally this article says, could lava tubes on the moon and Mars play a role in establishing a human presence on those worlds? Possibly, according to a team of researchers, their new study shows that lunar and Martian lava tubes might be so enormous and easily large enough to accommodate a military base. So it's out there in the mainstream. But I had to interview Billy Carson. If you don't know Billy Carson, he is a researcher. He's featured on lots of documentaries, including some stuff on Gaia. But he also has some amazing photos that his team has gathered from all the activity that's been happening on Mars. Here's the interview. All right, Billy, welcome to the show. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me back.
We're going to talk about Mars. So with the new images coming back from the rover, have you and your team discovered anything new that mainstream is not picking up that's happening on the surface of Mars?
Well, I'll tell you, I think they're picking it up, but they're hiding it in plain sight. So the Mars Perseverance rover just landed a couple months ago, and it's already sending back some amazing images. And so NASA has been posting these images on their server, on their public site for everyone to download. And everyone that they post, like on their main page, for like, oh, look what the Perseverance rover took an image of. When you start zooming into all the rocks, all of a sudden, some of those rocks turn out to not be what looks like real rocks. There's like geometry, 90-degree angles, things that look like they were broken or snapped off of something else, things that look like they're sticking up out of the mud that may have more underneath the surface. So it's pretty interesting. It's kind of like just hiding it in plain sight. Here it goes, guys. So we've downloaded now probably about maybe a couple hundred of those images, and we've gone through them. We probably found at least 50 to 80 anomalies already just from the Perseverance rover. Incredible stuff.
So do you think that they're posting these images and saying, this is the surface of Mars, isn't it amazing? But they're also really trying to get people to pick up on the fact that there might be evidence of either an ancient civilization that was there or a civilization that is there now?
I think both. They're trying to show that there was an ancient civilization and right now. And so the people that are in charge of these images and the servers and everything else at Caltech, I really do believe that they're in a very sneaky way, very sly way, kind of just putting it out there for us because they probably have some type of agreement where they can't really fully disclose what they believe is there. They can't make any statements about it. They can't say this is what it looks like, or look, guys, this object doesn't look like it's a rock. So they kind of just throw things out there. Sometimes they obfuscate certain images. Sometimes they really don't obfuscate everything in the image and leave something standing out. So they'll obfuscate everything around the anomaly, which doesn't make any sense to some people, but then the anomaly is sitting right there, crystal clear. So I think they're just kind of really disclosing it to us in a backdoor kind of way because they probably can't make any official statement.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Now let's talking about maybe ancient civilizations or a recent civilization. There was an article posted several months ago about how they've discovered that they think that the moon has a lot of these kind of underground tunnels naturally formed by the formation of the moon. Same kind of stuff, caverns, tunnels, whatever you want to call them, that are also inside of Earth. So the next thing is, do these exist on Mars? But of course, all that makes me think of is underground bases, right? Because we don't even have to speculate that there's underground bases in the world, because there are, because we know that they exist. There's maps of them. People have been inside of them.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the idea that there's possibly underground bases in Mars, possibly underground bases on the moon? What is your thought process on that?
I believe it makes total sense to have an underground base on the moon and Mars, especially if you're an advanced civilization and you are inhabiting a space body like the moon or Mars, which has reduced amounts of atmosphere, reduced amounts of atmospheric gases, lower levels of gravity on both of those planet bodies. And then all of a sudden, you look at the Arecibo ground penetrating radar images that telescope took of the moon, and we can see now 30 meters beneath the moon's surface. And that's, again, just one of those, here you go, public, take a look at these images that we took of the moon with radar, and you start to see structures underneath and tunnels and openings underneath the surface of the moon. Some of these are like at 90-degree angles. So I know they're saying that they're naturally formed, but how much of it's natural and how much of it really looks artificial to me? It looks like somebody actually created that interior. And for Mars, it just makes sense, again, if you're trying to have a breakaway civilization, even if it's not from Earth, if it's even from another civilization, doesn't matter. It's mentioned in so many ancient texts that people have actually gone to Mars. In the Mahabharata, in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets is talked about, Akkadian, the Babylon epics as well. So obviously someone in some time period, in my opinion, had gone there. And if you did, and the atmosphere was just as harsh as it said it was in the Sumerian tablets, why not build an underground base? Why not go lower into the ground where you're protected from more radiation, where you could probably create warmth? You can build, and have an underground base there that can have structure and be set up. And then you can only come up to the top surface for other things like research, investigation, mining, looking for resources or whatever. Just makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, regardless what is there, it seems that all the resources on Earth, whether it's our country or other countries, are really making a push to go to Mars and inhabit it. And there's a hotel that's being built on Mars, supposedly in the next couple of years. I mean, it's just craziness.
Yeah.
It's as if we went from we can't live in space to now somehow we're inhabiting it. So your perspective on this where they're just kind of dropping these photos, at some point, they're going to have to come clean with what's been happening on the moon and Mars.
Yeah, they are at some point.
What do you, so that kind of, I guess, leads me to my final question is basically, what do you think is going to happen if they release that there is a civilization there, or that we've been there already and we couldn't tell you? Like, how do you think, one, how do you think they're going to release it? And two, what do you think the implications will be for our civilization? Okay,
well, I think first, they're slowly releasing information to us in terms of the barometric pressure, the atmospheric pressure, the amount of oxygen. All of a sudden, there's oxygen all over the place. There's a rain cycle, there's clouds, weather patterns. Now they're saying the soil on Mars is better than the soil on Earth for growing crops. So they're just trickling it on into us. And now we have Perseverance rover, which has a new science machine on it that's going to detect life on Mars. That's going to be announced within the next few years that they found alien life. It's going to be bacteria, but or something microscopic like that. But they're still going to announce alien life. So they're gradually building us up to the point where, oh yeah, by the way, in 10 more years, there was an ancient civilization here. Meanwhile, the billionaires are all making their move to Elysium, which is, by the way, an actual name on Mars for an area where they're going to be building, or probably have already started building the infrastructure, I believe. And I think that, if we find out that there was a civilization on Mars, or maybe is a civilization on Mars as a civilization, I think that we're going to start asking a lot of questions like, who were these people? Where'd they come from? That's going to open up a can of worms into the religious texts, first of all, because all the religious texts have these people in them, the gods that fell from heaven to earth and so forth. Those are the Gigi. And then the next thing that's going to happen is, What types of technology are you guys picking up over there? How can we utilize this technology for us to make our lives better? What kind of power sources did they have? And how come you're not releasing that information to us? What are you doing? Are we the new Christopher Columbuses? Are we killing these people? How come we're taking over their planet without who's in charge here? Who's giving the approval for this breakaway civilization from their side? So all these questions will come up when you don't tell people, when you keep it hush hush. You just go and do whatever you want, and then by the time they're done with their domination plan, it's too late. Nobody can kick them off. Nobody can make a move. They've already moved in, settled in, and created their own civilization.
Mm. And do you think that's been happening since the 1960s?
I truly believe that the United States and Russia collaborated and colluded way back in the 1960s. I think long before JFK made the famous speech that we need to go to the moon and do the other things, I think we were already on Mars with a very small remnant. And I think that we've been building that remnant into a nice sized civilization since then. And the X-33B military shuttles that take off for 2 years at a time from Earth, well documented, they're cargo ships. I believe they take cargo to Mars. That's what I believe they go. For 2 years, they come back every 2 years.
Wow, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Well, we'll have to see what happens. But is there anything that the viewers can do? Like, what if that happens? What if they say, "Hey, we have this civilization, and there's nothing you can do about it"? I mean, what does that leave us as actual Earthlings?
Yeah.
Is there a positive to this at all?
Well, I think that the positive would be to look at it from what their perspective is. We're going to, we, meaning the billionaires, we're going to abandon Earth, because obviously there's about over 100,000 billionaires looking to move to Mars now on a one-way trip, not coming back, including Elon Musk. This is well documented. Now, why would they leave Earth, the creature comforts of this phenomenal planet with butlers, maids, all the vacations they can ever want, all the beautiful scenery and everything else, the fantastic temperatures? They're not going to go live in a tin can in a suit until they die. There's an infrastructure waiting on them for these people when they get there. And in their mind, they're building a brand new civilization where they're going to eradicate, disease and the monetary system and start fresh again, leaving us to rot in our own sewage, basically. But so the positive side to this is we as the people of this planet need to say, okay, wow, they're getting out of here because they see us as a cesspool. Let's unite. Let's come together. Let's finally put down all of our differences. Let's delete this divide and conquer that they've programmed us with. Let's delete that software program in our brains. Let's unite and let's all become one, love one another, and build the tranquil, peaceful, green civilization that's our birthright on this planet.
Don't you guys think that's so interesting about the fact that he was saying that billionaires are getting together and they're trying to leave the planet and establish a colony on Mars? And that, he has proof that this is happening. I mean, what do you guys think of that?
Yeah, it's so like them. It's so like those fucking billionaires, just to ruin it
people.
for everyone here and then back on out when it gets a little tough here. But yeah, that was interesting because when he said that, I was like, is that true? And then I dove in, and it's sure enough, they're talking about it. Obviously, Elon Musk is talking about sending, what was it, like 1 million people or something? Mm-hmm. Something like that, some crazy number of people. But obviously, you got to have the sweet tipple, the money to be able to make that happen.
Right, right.
Yeah, but that's what I'm
some sort of
saying. It's happening
thing.
so fast. It's like this concept of living on Mars was created by Werner von Braun in the 60s, and plans don't look really any different. But now it's like, oh, we're going to do it in 2 years. We're building a hotel.
Yeah,
boom.
I still don't
Just
know
like
how
that.
they plan on. I mean, the atmosphere is pretty inhospitable for people among the earthly variety. So I don't like what are their plans here, to set up like a terrarium or something, or?
Well, that's one of the plans, but they could go underground.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I imagine they've thought of this, and they're not just going to send people and be like, "Oh, right, the gas." But it is.
No, I think they got that figured out. But
the other super interesting thing that Billy mentioned was like, it's a one-way ticket. Like, you're not coming back. Like if you
Right.
make it to Mars, best of luck to you.
Yeah, I don't have that in my DNA. I don't feel that urge to climb Everest. I don't feel that urge to get on a spacecraft and go to Mars.
Nope.
Like I admire it. I'm not making fun of it, but like I'm good. I'll stay here on the lush
Yeah.
Earth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. Maybe my mind will change if Earth falls apart, but right now I think I'm staying on
Yeah.
Earth.
So tonight, I went into some weird stuff. I tried to research some new stuff on Mars. I couldn't find anything that I loved, so I went to Ra. For those who don't know who Ra is from the Law of One. Law is an entity that is channeled. And just to give you a straight definition for the new people out there who don't know who the Law of One is, this is what it is verbatim. The Law of One material is a series of 106 conversations called sessions between Don Elkins, a professor of physics and UFO investigator, and Ra, speaking through Carla Rukark. Ra states that they are a sixth-density social memory complex that formed on Venus about 2.6 billion years ago. It's actually a really interesting channel. It's one of the most profound ones, interesting ones. It seems authentic. But for some reason, every sentence, it starts with Ra likes to pronounce who he is. I am Ra. So every sentence starts with I am Ra. So Ra, they asked Ra, they were like, what's going on with they asked what is the origin of humans?
Wait, what year was this channel, Josh?
Oh, did it say it in that paragraph I just read off? It was the 90s or the 80s? I don't know off the top of my head. I feel like I should. I feel like I'm failing everybody. Yeah, I don't know. I probably could Google it real quick, but I'm feeling lazy. So,
While you're talking, I'll do it.
okay, good. There you go. Okay, so I wanted to read to you some of these channels that if you really listen to them, they're very slow, and it's coming from Carla. But I'll speed up the reading for you. And this basically what Don was asking is, what is the origin of humans? Where did we come from? And this is what Ra said. I am Ra. You speak of third density experience, whatever that means. The first of those to come here were brought from another planet in your solar system called, by you, the red planet Mars. This planet's environment became inhospitable to third density beings. The first entities, therefore, were of this race, as you may call it, manipulated somewhat by those who were guardians at the time. Don asks, what race is that and how did they get from Mars to here? I am Ra. The race is a combination of the mind-body-spirit complexes of those of your so-called red planet in a careful series of genetical, that's the word actually, adjustments made by the guardians of that time. These entities arrived or were preserved for the experience upon your sphere by a type of birthing, which is non-reproductive, if that's possible, but consists of preparing genetic material for the incarnation of the mind-body-spirit complexes of those entities from the red planet.
That's a lot what they talk about with the Anunnaki. That's what they did. They came from another planet, their destroyed planet, and then they came down here, and then they genetically altered the human race. So that matches.
And this was just to get back to your year. This is 81 to 84. This went down.
Okay,
This is
thank
when
you.
it was channeled. Okay, cool.
Yeah, when it was
Thank you.
channeled. Yeah.
Perfect. So later on in the same session, Don asked another question, which I thought was awesome, and it's so Josh, it hurts. The question is there any particular race of people on our planet now who are incarnated here from second density? They had this long conversation leading up to this about what was left over from the second density, blah, blah, blah. Ra. I am Ra. There are no second density consciousness complexes here on your sphere at this time. However, there are two races which use the second density form. One is the entities of the planetary sphere you call Maldek. These entities are working their understanding complexes through a series of what you would call karmic restitutions. They dwell within your deeper underground passageways and are known to you as Bigfoot. The other race...
Wow.
Yeah.
What? Wait, hold on. Hold on a second.
Ra.
Bigfoot's connected to Mars?
Yeah, the same session it gets to this because they get into a different kind of conversation about second density and third density and what beings were left over from the second density that are still here. And Bigfoot's one of them, and that's why we can't see him because he's in a different density. You know, he's just hanging out, and we sometimes see him, sometimes don't. It's kind of interesting. So the last part of this is what Ra says. I'm Ra. The other race that is being offered a dwelling in this density by guardians who wish to give the mind-body-spirit complexes of those who are of this density at this time appropriately engineered physical vehicles, as you would call these chemical complexes, in the event that there is what you call nuclear war. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. That doesn't tie to Bigfoot or anything, but there you go. Just give it to you a little
Some
bit.
stuff
right there.
on Mars. Huh. Interesting.
So that's what-
So I know that Stitchin was around obviously before 1984 when they channeled this, but there wasn't a lot of people that really understood the Anunnaki story. I mean, today, if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably heard of Anunnaki. You probably watched Ancient Aliens. You've seen all you kind of understand it. But at this point in time, people weren't really. That wasn't something that I feel like they were just making up. They were getting from some other source.
Right. So,
Just a thought.
no, that's great. I wasn't just about the raw tonight. I had a little bit more, which is interesting. I actually have been inspired by Mars for a long time. In the early 2000s, I went to a MUFON lecture in LA with a friend, and I saw this presentation by this guy's name I can't forget, but it just blew my mind how many photos and how much evidence that were really weird coming out of Mars. Like NASA can't explain it all away. And some of it is so ridiculously interesting. So one thing that came out of that was these tubular structures. That kind of blew my mind the most. All over the planet in these photographs, you see these tubular structures like ribs in them. And I always wondered what that was. The guy at the time speculated like transportation or whatnot. But I just wanted to find what was out there that anyone could give me any perspective on what was actually happening. And I came across our boy, one of the most controversial people you could say in the space of UFOs and consciousness and weirdness in general is Andrew Basago. We've covered him a little bit before.
Oh, yes.
Basaga coming at you hot. This guy does not care.
Time traveler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's running for president. Watch out. He's running for president like every term. Like every term, he's like back at it.
The dude's
A few more each time.
I love this guy. I love just the balls on him to just be like, to tell the story he told. So basically, he's claiming he was part of Project Pegasus as a child, where he time traveled and jumped through portals all over the place. And it's a crazy story, and it's really interesting. Whether it's real or not, I can't say. But the guy runs for president, and he's got balls, dude. I love him. So I was looking up like, what are these tubular structures? Trying to find some sort of alternative theories on them besides just like, oh, maybe they're, the scientific term is this, just so you know what. Oh, actually, never mind. I just lied right there. I had a scientific term for something else. I'll bring that up later. So what does Basago say about these tubular structures? Well, one is that, this is what he said. Basically, now we know what the glass tubes on Mars are. This is from looking at photos. They are not indigenous rock formations that have oozed up from beneath the Martian surface. Indeed, they are no longer even a mystery. They are glassine structures with support ribs built by the human civilization living primarily beneath the surface of Mars. Now, he speculated that these tubes would be places that people would come up and look out into the Mars landscape, and they could just, they were free of storms and dust storms. But one of the photos he shows, which we'll post, apparently is conveying that people are actually looking out. So it's not just a photo of the structure, but it's also a photo of people gazing out of the structure into Mars, whatever they are. Anyways, he has so many photos on his site that some of them are actually really compelling. Some of them are not. I think if you're really deep into the stuff, you may have seen some of them before, but there's weird ones like an interdimensional being that he kind of broke down through a photo. There's a striding gremlin that's really crazy. It's this thing. There's like something that has like 8 legs, like some sort of half spider creature. There's a bunch of weird stuff that he's pointed out. Now, some of it is so blurry and obscure that you're like, okay, give me a break there, Basago. But some of it is really compelling. So I don't know. Check it out yourself. I'll post that stuff. Anyways, that's what I went into tonight, guys. I am raw and tubular structures. You're welcome.
Can you imagine dating a guy, or maybe not you guys, maybe dating a girl? Literally, every time they spoke,
I really can.
every time they spoke, they literally said, "I am Steven. And I would like to order a hamburger. I am Steven. I really like you." Like, what the fuck?
Oh, I love that.
I am Colin. I'm taking my pants off. Holy shit. All right. That means business.
I did get my kids to say I am raw for like a week straight until my wife kiboshed it because it got annoying. I mean, I admit it worked too well. I was too good at it. We all were saying it all the time. It was awesome.
I am raw. Yeah, that is fun.
I am raw. Mommy, can I have breakfast?
All right. Besides dick jokes, what do you got, Matt?
Oh, man. So many things. Well, not so much. Look, Phobos, guys. Well, 2 moons. The 2 moons of Mars. Strange little guys.
You gotta have 2. You can't just have 1. You gotta have 2.
You can't. Some people get by with 1. I like 2. Here we go. So Phobos. There's Phobos and Deimos are the two names. And in the ancient Greek, they mean fear and dread, which is interesting. But
Perfect
they're pretty
setting
small.
for you.
Pretty small. Like Mars is a relatively small planet compared to Earth and everything. But these two, one's 17 miles across, and the other one, that's Phobos, and Deimos is 9 miles across. So pretty small little satellite things going around the planet.
Yeah, little bitch moons.
So the weird thing about these two things, and apparently scientists, I just say scientists, I'm sure they have a bigger title than that, at NASA and JPL, they're pretty confused about these little guys because they're two relatively small they're rocks, and they don't really know how they came to be because both moons orbit the equator in a relatively neat and tidy circular fashion around Mars, which suggests that they coalesced from debris that kind of came together, you know? So it was already spinning all this debris that sort of came together and created, that's how obviously moons are created usually. But it's difficult to capture an asteroid and have it wind up in this beautiful symmetric circular orbit.
One of the things I'm always fired about, people need to watch, it's like 101 UFO. If you haven't seen it, go look up Buzz Aldrin on YouTube talking about the monolith on the moon. I like to call it Phobie because I can't pronounce the other name. What is it called? Not Phobie. What's the name of that
Phobos?
thing? Phobos. Okay, Phobos.
Yeah.
Look up that video. I mean, he is talking about a physical monolith on that moon that's there that looks man-made. It's one of the most compelling videos that anyone of a high position has said in a long time.
Does it look
so.
like the monoliths that ended up on Earth that
Very much.
mysteriously appeared and then disappeared?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, it's definitely. There could be a connection. I know Ancient Aliens made a connection. They're like the monoliths on Earth connect to the monoliths on Mars. If you just say it in a really cool voice, you know, like
Yes, of
ancient
course.
astronauts say. All right, Matt. So whatever. Do you remember your thought? It is 420. You can forget thoughts today. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's 420.
Yeah.
We should have replaced
good point.
alcohol with
Good
some
point.
kind of weed.
Yeah, they don't allow
kind of
that in Australia,
kind of
though,
a-
unfortunately.
Oh,
Don't they?
really?
What?
What?
No.
Jesus.
I know. I know. Tell me about it. All right. So, science, guys. All right. So, Mars, having a tenth of the Earth's mass, has a relatively weak gravitational pull, right? So, seemingly improbable that it would be able to capture asteroids that are zipping by. So, they're saying it has to have formed this way, but it just doesn't make sense.
Weird.
They said they shouldn't exist and they don't make sense. This is from a Japanese aerospace exploration agency, Planetary Expert. Now that's a
Wow.
title.
That's a
Interesting.
title. Could they be satellites?
Yeah, so well, we'll get to that, Melissa. Strap in. Phobos
Or on.
is said to be falling out of orbit, so it's the closer one to the planet, and they said like within 100 million years it actually either crash into the planet or it'll be just pulled apart and it will actually create rings around Mars in some amount of time. And Deimos is apparently losing its distance from Mars and is apparently slowly going out into space. So soon it won't have any moons. Interesting thing, in 1996, there was a Russian scientist by the name of I.S. Shlokovsky.
Nice.
Nailed it.
Nice,
Nailed
dude.
it.
I felt it. It felt right.
Lady Boss.
So he actually collaborated with Carl Sagan back in '66 on a huge book, apparently at the time, called "Intelligent Life in the Universe." In the book, Shlovsky recounts his 1959 determinations that Phobos had a low density, and he wrote, "Could Phobos indeed be rigid on the outside, but hollow on the inside?" So they've said this about
Like a
our
satellite.
moon, obviously. Yeah, natural satellite.
What's going on? All the
cannot be
moons
a
in our
hollow object.
in our solar system are weird. All right, go on. It's like every single one of them's hollow. This is crazy.
Yeah. So he goes on to say, therefore, we are led to the possibility that Phobos and possibly Deimos as well may be artificial satellites of Mars.
Wow.
At the time, Carl Sagan added, conceivably, the capture and hollowing of a small asteroid may be technically more feasible than the construction in orbit of an artificial satellite with material from its source. So basically saying, either way you look at this, these things could be not man-made, but structures created by some alien society. So this doesn't hold a lot of weight. I guess scientists today say, the numbers they were using aren't totally correct, and we've been able to measure density a little bit more. But they're saying it's not completely incorrect, that while they're not completely hollow, they do have these odd pockets of space within them. This like porous structure throughout each one, because they're not actually as dense as they thought they were.
Wow.
It's interesting that NASA doesn't seem to have much interest on the surface of these moons, choosing to investigate the planet Mars itself rather than these moons. In fact, the only real information we've picked up from the moons has just come from like cursory glances on the way to the planet itself. But an interesting story was Russia actually tried and failed a number of times to send a mission to Phobos and Deimos to try and directly measure what was happening with these two little satellite moons. So there was two missions launched, Phobos 1 and Phobos 2. And this was actually a post-Cold War joint effort between Russia, USA, France, Germany, and a handful of other countries.
Right on.
So they launched these rockets in 88. But weird stuff happened. So Phobos 1 suffered terminal failure en route to Mars due to human error by an engineer who apparently entered an incorrect computer command, which caused the solar panels have to constantly we have problems. We have problems.
There you
so
go.
they
High five. I mean, no.
Borat was doing it. So they apparently whatever error caused the solar panels to point away from the sun, which means this thing lost power and then eventually just kind of floated out into space. It was dead.
Oh, boy.
But Phobos 2 actually attained Mars orbit. So its job was to sync up with the two moons of Mars and go follow its orbit to be able to take photos and measurements of Mars and the two moons at the same time. So Phobos 2, they said, the mission was flawless until the craft aligned itself with the moon. On March 28, 1989, an elliptical object was detected moving towards the satellite seconds before it failed.
What?
So this is the story. 1989, TASS, T-A-S-S, the official Soviet news agency, stated Phobos 2 failed to communicate with Earth as scheduled after completing an operation yesterday around the Martian moon Phobos. Scientists at Mission Control have been unable to establish stable radio contact. So what happened? Here's what happened, guys.
Break it down.
So Phobos 2, like I said, was able to sync up with the orbit of these two moons. And it started sending photos back to Earth. So initially it started sending interesting photos of the surface, and then it started pumping back these infrared shots of Mars. And what it showed was pretty interesting as well, of just the infrared photos of Mars, because it showed what seemed to be a pattern of structures resembling interconnecting cities.
Ooh.
But this was below the surface of the planet.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Here we go. Hollow.
Wait, on the moon.
No. This was on Mars.
This is on Mars.
So this was specifically shooting infrared imagery of Mars itself, the planet.
Well, those tubular structures
So
make
this-
more sense. All right, go on.
Yeah, right? Yeah, but this was
Right.
below the surface of Mars. So this truly bizarre obviously had everyone kind of wondering, what the fuck is happening? And they eagerly awaited the next set of photos to kind of shed more light, but it didn't come. The next set of photos didn't come for like another month or so. They were waiting forever. And then not long after the next grouping of photos came, the connection to Phobos 2 was suddenly cut. So here's, and what the photos show was pretty crazy just before it lost contact. So apparently Phobos 2 took this photo of the Mars surface that appeared to show this odd shadow. It was a silhouette of this cigar-shaped shadow.
We've heard this before.
Right? Cigar-shaped.
Turd.
And whatever this thing was
Was it
several,
March?
Several,
No. What
It
we've
was
learned,
March,
Melissa, is that most UFO
was
sightings
March!
happen
Holy shit,
not
it was
on March.
March.
Oh, what?
It
What?
was March.
My
We
joke
did
just
it.
fell apart.
Guys, we did it. It was March.
I knew it. I was right. I love being right.
Holy shit.
As a woman, I always like to be right. And if you
Yeah.
haven't listened to the other
Mostly
podcasts,
wrong.
in March and July is when most UFO sightings happen. Nobody knows why, but it was just a data point that came out. Anyway, I love being right. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
This was a heck of a sighting too. So,
Wow. On Mars.
surface of Mars, it takes this photo and it's seemingly, it captures a shadow, a silhouette of this huge cigar-shaped object that was being cast from behind it, right? So as the satellite, this Phobos 2 satellite, the Russian thing, as it's spinning in orbit with the two moons, it then takes another photo of Phobos, the moon. But in that photo, it takes, let's see if I can find I have photos of these too, so I'll post these up. So as Phobos 2 spun around, it took a photo depicting the moon of Phobos and a long cylindrical shape that they measured, that they sort of estimated a measurement of over 20 kilometers long. This thing was fucking huge.
Oh.
And it was in the foreground just before the planet. And this was apparently the object that was casting the shadow onto the planet. So they were basically saying that this thing was sneaking up on Phobos 2 in one shot, and just before as it spins, it takes another photo of this thing coming toward it. And they said this thing was moving. That they could see in the series of photos that this thing was moving. It wasn't a stationary object. And
Cool.
there was a number of
Whoa.
people who tried to say, it was like an artifact or whatever, but several cameras on this thing took
party
the same
poopers.
photo.
Really?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
As always,
amazing.
Oh, I gotta
Crazy.
see. I haven't seen that. I've never heard of that before. I gotta see that shit.
See, but
Yeah.
this goes back to that whole thing that this concept that even, maybe before the secret space program, right? If there was such a thing, that the planets are inhabited by something else, whether they're underground or we can't see them, or there's some other kind of, they're not biological, whatever, but it kind of plays into that, right? There's some kind of advanced civilization possibly
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
surface of
Yeah.
Mars or in underground tunnels, tubes, whatever.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, what do we know? It's actually smarter to live underground. We know that. So if you're an advanced species, maybe you're always building underground, so you don't have to get hit by asteroids. That makes sense.
Right. Yep. Especially
Wow.
with the shape that is the surface of Mars right now. It's pretty, like I said, inhospitable. So maybe that's all they have left. But there's this interesting quote that was from a Russian scientist, I believe, talking about this object. So he said, I'll find it later. A scientist.
Whatever.
So Phobos 2 captured strange photos of Mars before losing contact with its base, which is orbiting above Mars, when Soviet scientists lost contact with it on Monday. I think this is from a news article at the time. It had photographed an unidentified object on the Martian surface seconds before losing contact. Scientists described the unidentified object as a thin ellipse 20 kilometers long, like I said, so
Wow.
pretty fucking big.
So cool.
It was further stated that the photos could not be an illusion because it was captured by two different color cameras, as well as cameras taking infrared shots. Like I said, this was not just one camera that had space
Right.
dust on the lens,
Right.
So one controller at the Kaliningrad Control Center concluded that the probe was now spinning out of control. It would seem that something had struck or shot at the Phobos 2 probe.
Ooh.
Or disabled
Interesting.
it. Like some of
Yeah.
these
Why did it
UFO
ram it?
situations in
Yeah.
the past have disabled like a flight, an airplane.
Well, it sounds like it rammed it. Like, why did it ram it, though? That's the only thing I'm going to ask. Like, it sounds like it didn't shoot it. It like rammed into it, Like, if it was an
I
advanced...
know, yeah, like something hit it.
You're right.
Yeah.
Like, if it was an advanced craft, would it just, like, neutralize it? But for some reason, it was like, no, we're going to run over this satellite and show those humans what's up, Like,
Right, yeah. Or something like they said shot at it, but it was obviously enough, not just to make it spin out of orbit, enough of a hit, but it actually lost contact with home base. So I guess it was destroyed,
right.
which is pretty crazy. So I guess they measured it spinning wildly out of control.
Oh, okay.
before it lost contact. So.
So it got yeah, okay, then that's interesting. It got pushed or shot something. Okay. Because if a huge object just went through it, it'd be disintegrated. That means it got peppered with something, or you know what I mean? Why did it suddenly start spitting like crazy?
Which makes this whole story makes me like all that much more like hesitant to jump on board Elon Musk's traveling spaceship to Mars. You know what? I don't want to get shot out of orbit.
Let's
to be honest.
talk about crazy speculations. Is it possible that, just crazy speculation, that whoever, let's just say there's a race on Mars, an alien faction that lives on Mars, and now they're like, okay, you can come to Mars and you can live here. We're totally cool with it now. You think maybe that's what's happening?
Oh, okay.
Maybe are you saying like maybe we
have permission now?
Some kind of
maybe I don't know. Well, I mean,
we do have a space force.
We
now.
have
Maybe
a history
in some kind of battle.
We have a history as a species as going around a continent and then going there, whether the indigenous people or not want us there. And who's to say the species is advanced? They're living on a planet that's all red dust. It's
they have cigar-shaped. They have cigar-shaped ships.
Oh, that's true.
So they are floating around space. I mean, if we're connecting all the stories together that we've been covering in this podcast,
you're right.
We're suggesting that there's something highly advanced there, and that we've known about it for some time. And
who's going to tell Elon? Who's going to tell Elon what's going on? He's still acting like there's nothing going on. We're going to Mars. Every time he talks about UFOs, he sends out like funny memes, and like he doesn't believe in it at all. Like, is he really like ignorant to everything that's happening? I just don't buy it. Like, wouldn't he know all that, Melissa? Wouldn't he know? Like, why would he be so?
I mean, he's still
bullish.
He's still telling people to buy Dogecoin. So
it's called Dogecoin.
What's going on with that guy? Doge,
yeah.
What'd you say?
He's just living, he's like one of those eccentric billionaire type of guys who's like just doing what he wants to do. This is what he believes. He doesn't care. And he's going to Mars. He's building an amazing colony, and you can live there if you want.
Put that guy in touch with Billy Carson. That's who we need to talk to. Those two need to connect. Yeah. Things would be a better world.
Right. That would be an interview.
Hell yeah, it would.
But you're right, Josh. Like, there's very little history of humans coming to a new place and just saying like, you know what, we'll have our little place over here and we'll live peacefully next to you.
Right.
It's never happened.
There's very little evidence of that ever happening.
This is what happens. They make friends with the natives or whoever owns that property or running that property, living there, and they're like, yeah, no, we're hungry, feed us, and we love your women here, so nice. And then all of a sudden they're like, and let's just take them over.
Right. Here's some blankets. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine.
Don't worry about it. We're gonna take all your gold. It's totally cool. It's totally cool.
Have some blankets with some biological warfare covered in it.
Right. We're gonna bring COVID to Mars and just wipe them out. It's
exactly.
Oh boy.
Anyway, so I really hoped you enjoyed this podcast because I am fascinated with Mars. And of course, there's been people for the last 20 years dissecting all the images from Mars. But now we have so many because of all the involvement that's happening on Mars, which is amazing. And whatever's going on there, there's definitely a hype from every single country on this planet to get their presence on that planet. And I think that's very interesting. So I guarantee we're going to have more podcasts on Mars. So stay safe out there and pack your bags if you're going to go to Elon Musk's new hotel.
Good luck and goodbye.